Hi, welcome to another episode of Hot Takes. Starmer's always been banging on about human rights. As a human rights lawyer, these things were important to him. Except, of course, not now. Not now he's Prime Minister. Human rights interfere with his ability to put everyone in prison who thinks other than he thinks. And so he's planned a thing that they're calling now Starmer courts. And basically it's those charged with terrorism, for example, who were supporting Palestine action. They're going to be bumped straight into a courtroom. There will be no jury. There will be a trial by a judge. You will have a maximum of 36 minutes. And you will be imprisoned for up to 6 months. There will be no right of appeal. This is what he wants. Basically, he wants to remove the jury so that you will be arrested by the state, charged by the state, prosecuted by the state, found guilty by the state, and punished by the state. And there is no line in the middle where the state can be broken by having a jury trial. Do not get me wrong. I do not like Palestine action. I think they're awful. I think they're dangerous. However, I dislike the idea of not having a jury trial. It forces the prosecution to prove their case. This is not justice. When you're given 36 minutes and there's no jury and you've got to convince a judge who's been appointed by the government, what does this smell of to you? Dictatorship? Now, the plans have actually been drawn up by a guy called Justice Michael Snow, and he's got form on this. When Assange appeared before him, he was there at the first hearing after being dragged from the embassy. Snow called Assange a narcissist, even though Assange had said nothing but to confirm his name, and at that point no evidence had been laid. So a very, very biased judge. And Snow has now decreed that those 2,000 people charged under Section 13 of the Terrorism Act, that's because they were supporting the Palestine Action, who are a prescribed group, of course, they'll now be tried in batches of 5 at the rate of 10 people a day, giving 36 court minutes for each defendant. And this is basically a political show trial. And the appeals are already going in advance that this is against the European Convention on Human Rights, against the Bill of Rights. It's against all jurisprudence, and they're saying that none of these convictions will be found to be safe in law. Now, that 36 minutes isn't 36 minutes for you to defend yourself. It's 36 minutes between the beginning and the end of the trial for both prosecution and defence. And basically, if you haven't finished, she's just going to go boom and guilty, and away you go. A 72-year-old woman, Deborah Wild, objected that these trials would be far too short to present a proper defence. And the court snapped back, or the judge snapped back and said, "I'm satisfied that the time is sufficient. I'm not going to give you more time. Your only remedy is the High Court." Boom. The appeal went straight in, High Court. He knows that people can't afford to go to the High Court generally because it costs a lot of money, but there are people taking this up. And a lot of people are very, very unhappy about this. But the worrying thing is the lack of jury. Now, it is the only safeguard we have is a jury trial. That's the only safeguard we have, because the jury is the one aspect in which the state cannot control anything. Perhaps the most worrisome or really astonishing thing, I suppose, is that this frankly draconian legislation is that arousing suspicion is actually the offence. And I'm going to say what arousing suspicion is, because if I call this up, Section 13, and I've got it here, so there we go, I've got it here. Here's the relevant part of this. A person, you are guilty if a person in a public place commits an offence if he wears an item of clothing or wears, carries or displays an article in such a way or in such circumstances as to arouse reasonable suspicion that he is a member or supporter of a prescribed organisation. A person commits an offence if the person publishes an image of an item of clothing or any other article in such a way or in such circumstance as to arouse reasonable suspicion that the person is a member or supporter of a prescribed organisation. In subsection 1A, the reference to an image is a reference to a still or moving image produced by any means, and a person is guilty of an offence under this section that shall be liable for the summary conviction of imprisonment for a term not exceeding 6 months and a fine not exceeding level 5 on the standard scale or both. Arousing suspicion. So you're not going to have a jury trial and you're going to be prosecuted on arousing suspicion. Not actually doing anything, not actually being proven to be a supporter, but simply being suspected of being a supporter is now going to put you in prison for 6 months and no jury. Starmer's human rights lawyer, he would be standing up for this, surely, if it was another country. You know, you've done nothing wrong. And don't get me wrong, I am totally against Palestine action. But that's not, in this case, it's not who they're supporting that's the issue. It's the law that's the issue. And it's this judge that's the issue. You could be prosecuted, found guilty and jailed by a biased judge for the charge of being suspected of being a supporter, not actually being a supporter. You could actually be someone who's against them, but somebody's made a claim and therefore you are suspected, and then you'd end up in prison. And you don't have that jury there acting as a safety valve on justice. This is Starmer. We are now living in a dictatorship. We are now living in a world where justice has been suspended to suit the desires of a megalomaniac. Starmer needs to be taken out of office. We are going down a very dark line here. Let me know what you think. Thanks very much. Bye.